company was brought on as part of a AI machine learning algorithm company for Task Force 59. We flew to the Middle East and we built models there in the AOR. There's a lot of interest and pull by Saab Inc. to be like, hey, we need to start expanding our AI footprint. Understand like how an AI software company can come into this established company that builds exquisite hardware. We were lucky enough to be acquired in August of 2023, and it's been an incredible time since then.
This is All Quiet on the Second Front, a podcast where boring conversations around defense tech and national security come to die. Join me, Tyler Sweat, and my Second Front comrades as we dismantle the mundane and cut through the bureaucratic BS to demystify the world of defense tech. But be warned, this is not a typical government podcast. Ready to get weird?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, Tyler Sweat. Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front, the podcast where boring defense talk comes to die. Really excited for a different flavor of conversation today. So we're going to get to explore not just, hey, what is it like to go build an impactful company, but what's it like to sort of transact and live through an exit and sort of come from the other side. So I want to thank Davaki for coming and joining, and pretty excited to click in today.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we like to start, sort of give everybody kind of the story. So the high points, who are you? Kind of background, where'd you come from? And what's the journey sort of been that you're on?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Devaki Raj, and I am the Chief Digital and AI Officer at Saab. So prior to this, I was the CEO and founder of a company called Crowdai, which built a no-code AI platform for a wide variety of enterprises as well as very mission-focused areas. So I've been almost on a decade journey of being a small business selling AI to both, large public companies as well as the U.S. government. Yep. So let's talk about the latter. So a little bit about my background: studied statistics and machine learning. Did my master's, worked at Google for a little bit, and then was like, why not me? When you're in Silicon Valley, There's two approaches to life. It's either working in a big company or it's, let's start the entrepreneurial journey. So that was me. So in 2016, started Crowdai. And, kind of we were on the nascent side of starting AI, and there are companies that are talking about it, but not really doing it. There are companies that are doing applications primarily around self-driving cars. So that's where we started building AI technology for self-driving cars. And then as we started maturing, right, we realized that the flavor of AI really depends on what market you're in. The maturity depends on what market you're in. The ability and willingness for people to adopt AI technologies totally varies depending on where you are. And I think the DoD at that point in time was in this nascent stage, which was really exciting. So, I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, grew up very, very close to Hanscom Air Force Base, but actually,
labs up there.
That's right, great place. Yeah. But honestly, I never grew up knowing anyone that was deployed or whose family was in the military. So it was very, very different. So when I found myself presenting to DIUX in 2017 and the onset of Project Maven, I was, definitely out of my element. But the thing that I noticed is that people were very passionate. They really wanted to make a difference. It wasn't actually necessarily about the technology, but the application of the technology to actually improve the lives of people, to actually make sure that there's products are safer. And that's what really got me excited about working with military. Honestly, our first project was wildfire. So helping CAL FIRE and Air National Guard build, AI products to map wildfire in real time.
That's awesome.
And that was exceptionally beautiful.
Yeah.
And
that's such a cool first project.
Oh,
Holy
is
cow.
Incredible. Yeah. And we could talk about it very openly. Yeah. And so, it also made a difference. Remember, this was 2016, 2017, 2018 Silicon Valley, not, 2023, 2024, where there's a lot of...
Yeah, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool to be doing defense then. Now it's become fetch. It wasn't back then.
Exactly. Different times.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what started my journey. In parallel, obviously, we sold products to the biggest beer manufacturer, et cetera. So it was really about kind of threading the needle between...
True dual use.
Correct. Exactly. I think that's how you become successful in this area. How I got introduced to Saab was actually through Michael Bressor. So my company was brought on as part of a AI machine learning algorithm company for Task Force 59. We flew to the Middle East and we built models on bases there in the AOR. And that was like, I think, the first time we were like, okay, it's important to be there. Yeah. GPS denied environments, no access to like internet, like very consistent internet, right? So that was really eye-opening for me. And so recently, and so a little bit on that journey, worked with Michael Bressor really closely while he was Commodore of Task Force 59. And then as we started expanding, there's a lot of interest and pull by Saab Inc. to be like, hey, we need to start expanding our AI footprint, right? We built exquisite hardware for the last 85 years. Now let's make it software enabled. Let's make it AI enabled. We want.
I drove an awesome 9.3 turbo back in the day.
That's right. Gen Z doesn't know about this, but like when we grew up, there were Saabs everywhere on the streets. Yeah. And so it was really interesting for us to walk through that journey, understand like how an AI software company can come into this established company that builds exquisite hardware. And so, we were lucky enough to be acquired in August of 2023, and it's been an incredible time since then. And we actually announced today at AUVSI the launch of SCAPA, which is essentially like, how do we get cutting edge technology integrated into all of these fantastic, exquisite pieces of hardware, and then show the world that you could be a existing defense contractor with the most cutting edge AI technology. So I'm really excited
to be
here.
It's not either or.
Correct.
It's a yes and. It's a real cool, better together story.
I mean, that's the only way, honestly, across the military industrial base. Yep. You can't really win if you're either or. You have to be both.
Would be interested, I think recently there have been a bunch of stories that have come out about some of the startup tech in Ukraine and in some of these other more austere environments, and some of maybe the harsh learnings that folks are going through about like real edge deployment and GPS or spectrum denied or contested, and what that means. Can you talk a little bit about just your, not just experience with Mike and the team at 59, but your philosophy on, hey, how are you building empathy and how are you understanding the actual requirements of that user, not maybe what's written down in like a project statement or a problem statement or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in Silicon Valley, generally, you're like, well, we have the greatest technology. We know what to build. If we build, they will come. Yeah. Honestly, it's not like that anymore, right? And so there's a couple of ways I started understanding how to build user empathy, how to build products that people want. And that started with, honestly, sitting side by side with an analyst. We started with NGA's geospatial analysts. We hired people from NGA's, geospatial division onto our team, right? And now one of them is Mike Foster, who's now the CDO, Chief Data Officer of CENTCOM, right? So it's really about hiring the right people that understand, that lived through that understand what the actual mission need is, and then building products side by side. More recently, I had the honor of going for about 2 weeks into the CENTCOM AOR with General Kurilla's team, as well as CTO Miss Moore, Skylar Moore's team. And that was truly eye-opening, right? You think you have an idea of the technology that's necessary, but when you're there, you live in this environment that is completely different from the exceptional connections and internet connection and things like that you have way back in the States. So it was an incredibly eye-opening experience, but also what you realize is that people are working in these environments and they're still wanting to push the envelope about what's possible and still trying to innovate in the restrictions that they have. And that's what's really motivating.
It's pretty cool. It's funny, I'm gonna date myself, but like 2006 through 10 was forward deployed in Afghanistan. None of our tech worked. We were using Afghan cell phones for everything. And we would be getting like connexes of gear from some well-intentioned program in the States. They'd be like, hey, here's this brand new like intelligence dashboard. It's freaking rad. I have no fucking power. What do you want me to do with this thing?
No.
And I think we finally, and like the stuff that Skylar's doing, and Jenna Carrillo, and Jock Hogville, and like these just leaders who are pulling us forward and bringing folks together so that you're not expecting someone to infer an operational reality through words on like a Microsoft PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You're allowing them to actually like sense it, and like with primary senses. And I think that is just creating such a flatter chain in terms of how we're developing and releasing new capability. And hopefully it starts to change that relationship, not just with, some of the startups or the dual use or the DIUs, but to your point, the Saabs and the Primes of the world. So I'd love to, take that philosophy that you had sort of at Crowd and you've built from Silicon Valley. What's it like now on the other side of the table, sort of fitting in with, an incumbent, someone who's been around for almost a century, making big metal bendy kind of stuff?
No, honestly, I'm really grateful because I think when I first joined, a larger company, I was a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, how can we navigate this large company? But we have been exceptionally lucky in that we were given a very broad purview, right? It was a two-pronged purview. The first is, okay, why don't we show the world that Saab is building the best AI software? So let's, with our existing customers that are, building models for existing sensors for search and rescue, wildfire, air order of battle, maritime order of battle. So kind of work within the customer base that Crowdai had already built and continue to put the rubber stamp of we have the best AI software. The second half is internally to Saab, both in the US as well as globally and in Sweden, how do we augment the existing hardware that they've already built, right? So for example, building autonomous systems using existing cameras and sensors on the Enforcer that they have. Natural language processing of, real-time radio communication for training exercises. Identifying underwater signatures from existing sonar and radio that's already been built that, Saab has been building. It's really about essentially how do you augment existing hardware with exquisite, exquisite software, and then making sure that all of the hardware is now software enabled. Yeah. And that I think is a completely different
gets you
mentality.
To that software sort of defined warfare kind of phase of the conversation. And how has the reception been? Like you brought it up, we've talked about it, right? Like Saab is such an interesting company to bring the capability you built in. How has the reception been like in the organization? And then as you guys are, out launching brand new capabilities, I mean, clearly the market is reacting well, but what's it been like culturally? Because I think there's probably a bunch of founders and operators listening who are like, yeah, cool. Like, I'm trying to figure out an exit, but I think everyone's scared. I'm like, what happens when I get to the other side of the table? Like, just like pat me on the head and put me in a corner? What does that look like?
I think we were really lucky. Again, through the acquisition process, we said we want to continue to lead the cutting edge of AI, right? It's not just about building the software, but it's also for our careers as well, right? Each of us at this point in time could easily get incredible AI jobs at all these places. So how do we continue to not only push the cutting edge of applied AI, but also AI research? Because everything's moving so quickly in AI. If you don't, every week there's something brand new. And so I think that was really important for us when we talked about the acquisition. Will we have a place to continue research? Can we continue to publish papers? How do we make sure that it is important for our individual careers as well as making an impact at the acquiring organization? Yeah. And then you have to think about it both ways because it's really about retention. We want to make a mark at Saab. We want to continue working at Saab. And it's really about how do we balance those two. Yeah. And I think if an organization is looking to acquire very nifty, nimble, cutting edge AI firms and software companies, you have to be able to work within that. Work within that.
Yeah. I think it speaks volumes about the culture at Saab that, what could be viewed on the outside as like a more industrial age company is rapidly transformed itself into a knowledge age. I mean, very significant sort of power player.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting year. So here's the other Saab aside. AI is like the hot topic right now. It's buzzword. So I don't want to get into like AI, but how do you look at, when you look across broader sort of public sector, there's very sort of understanding, appreciation for it. Like, what are you maybe bullish and bearish on from like an AI trend standpoint if you look out over the next like 18 months? Like, is there a thing that's got you excited, I guess?
Honestly, it's moving so quickly that every day I'm like, oh, I'm super excited about a couple of things.
It's
right?
moving so fast.
It's so fast.
Yeah.
I think in terms of pure research, I think multimodal.
Yeah.
It has to be multimodal. There's so much data that is across disparate places. Even, for example, for the training and simulation products that we're augmenting through AI, it's not just about imagery. It's not just about the data that's coming off of vests. It's about natural language processing. So you need to marry all three types of data in parallel to have a holistic view of what's happening on the ground. And if you only have one feed, then you're kind of in a hard position because you're actually not bringing
Pushing
that entire story
to the limit.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's something from a very tactical perspective in terms of research. In terms of large company enterprise adoption, which is actually what my sweet spot is, because we sold AI products to the largest beer manufacturer, right? It wasn't about selling it to the latest tech companies because they've got hundreds and thousands of engineers that they're throwing at the problem.
Yeah.
So that piece I think is very interesting, and it really comes down to are they willing to innovate, but also how do they view their internal data?
Yeah.
So that I think is really interesting. There's a lot of large models out there that don't fit the paradigm of large companies because it was built for researchers. It wasn't built for implementation. So how do we get these large models that sit behind a firewall that continuously get retrained with the most cutting edge technology? That I think is still an unsolved problem that then, leaves a lot of these large enterprises behind.
Sort of in the dust. Yeah.
Correct, exactly. And so that's what I'm really excited about. How do we think about it? You could always think about edge processing for small models, but how do you think about processing proprietary data behind firewalls with the most cutting edge AI technology?
I like that.
I'm excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, heck yeah. All right, there's a little on the spot here. What's like the one thing you wish you knew before you went through a transaction? Like, is there something you're looking back on and you're like, I would have optimized for this a year before, we got bought or something like that? And I'm thinking of everybody, all the founders out there and operators who are like, how should I be thinking about it?
Ultimately, it's about building relationships. Every single transaction, whether it's you're doing individual sales or
Yep.
you're actually selling your company through an M&A, it's all relationship based. A large public company won't wake up one day and be like, you know what? I really want to buy this small startup that it has been in the news cycle for us.
You saw these guys on Twitter, you should definitely scoop them up.
Exactly, right? It's all about, honestly, it's really about process. It's about relationships, having everything in order and building relationships. And kind of, you have to craft the vision for the acquiring company to say, this is why we can build together. I was really lucky enough to have Michael Brasseur as that visionary, as CSO of Saab, to help us, understand on both sides, both the military side as well as the large enterprise side, as well as, he's worked with startups in the past, kind of build that, triumvirate vision together. And so it's everything, again, is about relationships. And that's ultimately what it is.
I mean, you've got the full sort of end to end of, working with Mike at 59, Mike leaving, coming over to Saab, and then effectively that relationship you've built and that trust and that shared vision being able to then traverse, startup, big company, bring it together, new capability. I think it highlights hey, you never really know. And, treat all of these different engagements and all of these relationships and all of these customers as something critical and important and not as like a single transaction at a point in time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think every startup founder goes through that understanding, and it takes time. But that's what makes a startup founder more resilient over crazy times in, the capital raising environment.
Yep. What is last question, and then we'll get two last questions. Second to last question then. What biggest takeaway, from sort of founding to exit? What's the, you've got, let's say there's a class of brand new, soon to be CEO founders sitting outside, what's the one takeaway you give them? What's the one piece of advice?
I can't give just one piece of advice. It's been, quite a journey.
Yeah, throw a few.
But
We'll allow it. There's no real rules.
But
there.
ultimately, it's two-sided, right? Take care of your people.
Yep.
Take care of your people, and people will see the way you take care of your employees, and they would want to work with you.
Love that.
And that's the biggest piece of advice, because now the people that I worked with that were on my team are now leading organizations, and that is about building that relationship, continue to maintain that relationship no matter what. You want the best for your team.
Yeah.
And if you want the best for your team, everyone can see that. Customers, potential acquirers, and your team.
Yeah. It's all about the people.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of those recurring themes through the tech community. Everyone's like, talk to me about it. You're like, yeah, you can make the tech go burr.
Yeah.
So you need the right team.
Absolutely.
You need the right team oriented and taken care of and built on a foundation of trust, and then pretty much anything's possible.
One of my team members now is writing a book about procurement in the government. How can startups now work with the government? What that looks like? What's that playbook? Right?
Yeah.
And you just support them in their journey, whether it's with you or in their next career.
That's awesome. All right, last question. Queen for a day. Get to change one thing, right? We've talked about founding companies. We've talked about working with the government. We've talked about M&A. We've talked about big sort of industrial companies. We've talked about people, customers, and relationships. You can change one thing, and you don't have to caveat it. Like, it'll work, right? Like, you wave the wand, your intent is realized. What's the thing you changed?
I know this sounds super in the weeds. The ability to test and evaluate software in an apples to apples comparison.
Yep. Big fan.
That's
Big
the
fan.
only way that we could get the best technology in the hands of people that need it the most.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that the world's largest software buyer makes its technical decisions off PowerPoints and PDFs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to user test.
Yeah.
And that, I think, that will make everybody, they will make, society safer.
Yeah,
ultimately.
I love that answer. Well, dude, I could do this all day.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you so much for spending some time. I know you've got a huge, busy schedule out here, so thanks for swinging by, sharing the story with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And, keep doing this, right? I'm really glad that we were partnering with Second Front Systems, because I think this is the future. It's about partnership and deploying the best technology together. It's not just this, the rising tide lifts all boats.
That's what we're here for. So couldn't be more excited.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.